And good evening. This is Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and my co-host, David Kanyuk. And Ryan will be producing in the studio. We have a guest sitting in with us tonight, and I met her a couple of weeks ago on Mac's show. Her name is Carolyn Pettit. And Carolyn says, in the interest of disclosure, that she didn't care if I mentioned how we got to know each other. And Carolyn was previously in her life in lesbianism, and was at a point in her life demonically possessed, and has been delivered, and now lives and breathes for Christ.
Amen to that.
Is that a safe to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Go for it. Okay. Sounds good to me.
So Carolyn has a mic, and you're invited to join in on the conversation if you have something that you'd like to jump in on.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. As always, our call-in numbers, if you'd like to join the show, is toll-free 855-244-0077. And if you'd like to call locally, it's 244-0077. I like to try to start the show with something uplifting, but I come across something this week that is kind of the genesis of this program. And what I wanted to do was kind of tried to blend my faith and politics. And there was a small story in the news this week that I think will kind of point out the direction I'm trying to take this show. I try really hard not to call people names, but Secretary of State John Kerry is just frankly brain dead. He has recently blamed poverty for terrorism. This same excuse has been blamed for crime and drug violence. Wrong, wrong, and wrong. Some of the poorest folk in history lived through the Great Depression, but yet there was not widespread crime among the masses. In fact, the Bible speaks to the fact that wealth, for the most part, works against man's benefit. And Christ continually lifted up the poor. You see the problem, Mr. Kerry, for crime and terrorism and all manner of corruption, it's not poverty, it's godlessness, and man's turning away from God's will. Poverty is only a symptom, as terror and crime are. Man's iniquity in Eden started a full-blown rebellion against God's law, and when you disregard his law, all is fair game, so much like treating cancer by treating salve on an open lesion. To deal with terror and the hate that man has for his fellow man, you must treat the cancer, and that cancer is sin and rebellion. So, John, oh boy, you're just out of your depth and talking out your rear.
Well, haven't they also said that climate change could aggravate terrorism problems as well?
Yeah, I think
they have.
I think he was sending me something on Facebook to that effect this week.
I think the terrorism that they're referring to is rebellion against government controls. As poverty conditions and hunger and things like that increase, you're going to have a public that is not as willing to accept what the government is saying. So they might try to throw off the shackles of that government, which to the government, they view that as terrorism, whether it's justified or not. Those are the conditions that partially led to the Arab Spring just a few years ago. We saw that massive increase in food prices, unrest in the street, eventually led to toppling of governments. So he's not quite talking out of his rear in that sense, in some sense.
Well, so in other words, he's redefining terrorism.
Exactly. He's redefining terrorism as any action against government.
Well, now to the meat of our show. I give David a call this week, and I just threw a curveball at him, and I said, well, come prepared for loaded for bear like always. But I'm going to try a conversation this week, just a free-flow conversation. Mm-hmm. More so than kind of rigid stories and whatever. But I happened to watch something this week on the Free Speech channel on cable. And it was called Media Censored. And I don't know, I didn't get to do a lot of show prep today, so I didn't get this looked up on the internet or on Google, but you've heard of it, right, David?
Yeah, I think I've heard of that project, Media Censored.
Well, I'm going to Google it, see what I come up with here. But basically what they were saying is that corporations are in control of the media, and the corporations are dictating to you what is news. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, that's absolutely correct. I mean, it's on record. There are about 5 mega conglomerate corporations that control pretty much all of the different channels and news outlets that you get at all of the different media outlets, the newspapers and things like that. So that's what's led to the rise of the independent truth media, so-called. And we see this huge threat now with the truth media overtaking the establishment. I like to call them the dinosaur media, because they're just not able to adapt.
Well, part of what the story is that part of what they're saying is exactly right. Now, we've had a couple of news items that's hit the news this week that I seriously wonder if it's news. Do you think that Jay-Z, in a fight with Beyonce's sister Solange, or however her name is pronounced, do you think that that is newsworthy? Or for that matter, do you think that Casey Kasem disappearance...
Well, I thought the same people who took the Malaysian plane took Casey Kasem. I thought those were tied in together. I mean, am I wrong on that? Because I'm starting to look. Where was he found? He was found in. Where was he found?
I haven't heard the.
I'm going to start looking for the Malaysian plane there.
Well, one of the things that was brought up. Here's the top 25 most censored stories of 2012 to 2013. Israel gave birth control to Ethiopian immigrants without their consent. Widespread GMO contamination. Did Monsanto plant GMOs before USDA approval?
Yes.
Transaction tax helped civilize Wall Street and lower the national debt. Pennsylvania. Getting some spam here on the computer. Pennsylvania law gags doctors to protect big oil's proprietary secrets. One of the stories, I won't go through all 25 of them, but one of the stories that they said was one of the top censored stories was that the potential of a vast increase in the number of suicides from our military veterans. And this goes unnoticed.
Sad.
This goes unnoticed in the media.
It's really sad.
And it comes down to, if we're talking 35 minutes in the media about Jay-Z's fight with Beyonce's girlfriend or Beyonce's sister, that's 35 minutes. We're not talking about something else.
Well, it's sleight of hand. They don't want to talk about anything of substance. They want to keep you just focused on bread and circuses and a bunch of celebrity Bravo Sierra, so that you're not actually paying attention to things that are going on. They don't want you to know about the facts of Benghazi or the IRS scandal or anything like that. They just and really it's working to a large extent. I mean, if you just troll through Facebook a little bit, I don't have anybody. I have maybe a couple of people talking about the net neutrality thing that happened this week, and the rest is like, so why did Solange beat up Jay-Z? I don't get it. What's going on? Could someone please tell me?
Well, now let me ask Carolyn, because we got into a conversation about this a little earlier out in the green.
Hold on with that real quick. I'm going to kind of throw a little loop in there. Okay, with retail store, they say whatever we push will sell. Could it come down to money in the media? Whatever they're pushing, is that like money? Can money have something to do with it?
Money does have something.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
money does have a lot to do with it. It's
whatever's going to sell, that's what we're going to give you.
Well, it's often said, if it bleeds, it leads.
Right.
Well,
Right.
it's kind of multifaceted as well. I mean, these conglomerates, they're also tied in with the banking industry, with the military-industrial complex and everything like that. Let me read this quote by David Rockefeller. This was from his memoirs. "We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjugated to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodetermination practiced in past centuries. For more than a century, ideological extremists at either end of the political spectrum have seized upon well-publicized incidents, such as my encounter with Castro, to attack the Rockefeller family for the inordinate influence they claim we wield over American political and economic institutions. Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it." That's David Rockefeller from his own memoirs.
Now, for someone that doesn't understand a lot of big words, what does that even mean? I mean, to put that in layman's term, how can you?
That means that there is a movement. First off, there is a movement towards a one world global government.
Okay.
That those conglomerates like Time Magazine, New York Times, and everything, they are in on it.
Okay.
Their editors go attend these meetings like Bilderberg. They're part of the Trilateral Commission, et cetera, and they honor a code of silence to not report on that. Or if anybody does try to report on that, ridicule it as conspiracy theory or something like that.
All right, let me ask Carolyn this, because we got in a conversation out here in the green room a little earlier about the football player Michael Sams, who was drafted in the NFL, and this has made national news. This is
right. Well, I was unaware. I don't watch the news. My apologies, but until you informed me of the story, then I was unaware of it. But now I'm aware.
Now, Michael Sams, in disclosure of what the story we're talking about, it was a gay college football player who outed himself, and the big controversy was, well, would he be drafted in the media? Or I mean, would he be drafted in the NFL? That was the story in the media, and how high would he go? Now, the higher you're drafted, potentially the more money you make.
Right.
So there's criticism that he was maybe blackballed or whatever because he was drafted maybe 2 or 3 from the bottom. And
is he worthy? Is his playing? Should he be up higher?
I don't know, because I don't know that much about his football talent.
Right.
But what made the media story is that he was standing, being consoled by apparently his boyfriend, and he was bending down talking on the cell phone and waiting for some information of who he was going to be drafted by. And when he found out apparently that he was drafted, he raised up and the boyfriend started playing tongue hockey with him. Mm-hmm. And this is the story that made the...
So what are you seeking out of me? Well, what do you want me to say to that?
Do you think that was a newsworthy media story, or do you think because what Media Censored is trying to imply is that the corporations get the people fighting on trivial matters while the real news is being ignored or censored?
Okay.
So by getting us fighting on Michael Sams, something else is happening that we should be paying attention to.
Okay.
But we're at our first break, and we will continue this story after the break. And this has been Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, David Kanyuk, and Carolyn Pettit. And of course, Ryan is in the studio producing. So we will return shortly and pick up this topic.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. there is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life, change your relationships, transform your world.
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device. Your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom! Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hey, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. I want to tell you about our brand new time slot. It's from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's on the same night, Tuesdays. We now follow Ed Fallon and the Fallon Forum on webcast1live.com. I want to tell you a little bit about our show. Our show is focused on local, state, and national, and sometimes international politics. We like to keep people updated and informed. We also have very interesting guests. So please join us every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on webcast1live.com.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. You know, there's an app for that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
And we're back with Frankly Speaking Live. I'm your host, Frank Holzhauser, and my co-host is David Kaniuk. And today we have a guest in the studio, Carolyn Pettit. At the end of the previous segment there, we started getting into the stories that potentially what is described as the corporate media gets us laymen out here fighting on and becoming contentious with each other, while the bank is being looted. While they're emptying out Fort Knox.
But apparently it's working, because if you're paying attention to the story now, if you didn't care for the story, didn't want to talk about it, wouldn't you just simply move on?
Well, that was my question to you. Do you think that? Obviously, you didn't see it and you wasn't aware of it.
No.
But based on the description I gave you of the Michael Sam story, do you think this is something that is worthy of media coverage?
Which part are they playing it from? Are they making a big deal because he's outwardly gay?
They was making a big deal out of kissing.
Okay, so if it was a heterosexual couple, would they make such a big deal out of it?
Well, my contention was that they probably wouldn't even have a heterosexual couple. I think the whole event was staged.
Really?
Yeah, I think the whole event was a photo op, And I think it was done with a specific purpose, because I think the gay lobby has an agenda that they're trying to put forward. And I think part of that agenda is presenting gay couples as just everyday, average, normal couples that have issues just like me and you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, it's a political football issue. It's designed to get the so-called right riled up and get against it, and get the so-called left riled up, trying to defend it as a major human rights issue. It's divide and conquer, basically, getting people to still believe that, oh gosh, I got to be a Republican so I can defend these things, or oh gosh, I got to be a Democrat so I can push these things. That's what it's all about.
Well, let me pose this to you. One of the things that was emphasized over and over and over again on the show was a term that I'm sure you have heard. I'm sure David's heard. You may have heard it also, but it is called the vast military-industrial complex. And that basically the vast military-industrial complex is what runs the medias. They're bought and paid for by the medias, or the medias are bought and paid for by the complex, and they are going to tap dance to the tune that the military-industrial complex wants them to dance to.
I think it just sounds like it's just a matter of what's going to sell. Whatever is going to push through the papers, whatever is going to get people's most attention, whatever is going to do to make the most out of whatever, that's what they're going to do. You know, like stories that need to be heard, like some people could argue, which I don't know how, like the starvations across countries, this or that's going across, but the people will say, well, that's been going on for years. Well, it's been going on years because nobody's doing anything about it. So it's like that gets passed off to the side compared to whatever's going to push, whatever's going to sell. So over things like, same as like from the Hurricane Katrina, there's things there that have not yet been fixed or cleaned up, but yet you don't hear about it anymore. It's just been pushed off to the side as if it doesn't matter. No, it does matter. It's just whose voice is going to be bigger and what's going to sell.
Well, for example, during the last presidential primary season for the Republicans, every Republican was sought out and systematically taken out, whether it was Newt Gingrich, Herman Cain, go right down the list. Now, I mentioned Herman Cain and I mentioned Newt Gingrich for a precise reason. That a bunch of women come out and made allegations about Herman Cain. These women disappear into the woodwork. Has anybody ever heard from them again? Where is the follow-ups on these stories? If these were stories of such great importance, and they weren't just a story during the political campaign, whether now it's trying to take out Chris Christie, you know, whether the Republicans are trying to preemptively take out Hillary Clinton, name it, but it's the idea that they make a story out like it's the biggest story in the world, and then there's no follow-up on it. Newt Gingrich, they brought back one of his ex-wives because Newt was some dastardly, terrible character, and now all of a sudden that ex-wife has disappeared into the woodwork, and nobody's heard from her again.
What do you want them to keep talking about?
Well,
I mean, seriously. Oh, Newt cheated. Yeah, he cheated. He's a scumbag. He's a sleazy little scumbag. He cheated.
Okay.
I mean, but you want to keep beating the dead horse? What if they were still reminding us that Bill Clinton cheated with Monica Lewinsky? I know she has been back in the news recently, but you know, if they're hitting on that for 14 years, well, at some point you're going to have a dead horse.
But the point I was making is these were non-stories to start with. I don't want no follow-ups on them because they were non-stories.
So why bring them up in the
They're
first
kind
place?
Of stories
is that what like you're saying?
Yeah, I don't think they should have been brought up in the first place.
There you go. That's what I was saying.
I mean,
so should Monica Lewinsky have not been brought up in the first place?
We know the follow-up from that one.
The follow-up of that is kind of ridiculous, but yeah, Monica probably should have been brought up. But see, this is what I'm saying.
Well, wait, what's the difference between that? I mean, okay, granted, one's the president of the United States at the time.
Well, the whole reason that Monica Lewinsky got brought up was the fact that Paula Jones was trying to file a lawsuit that she had been sexually harassed by the president, and she was trying to show a pattern of behavior by Bill Clinton, and that's how Monica Lewinsky got brought into the whole media feeding frenzy originally.
Well, weren't there sexual harassment allegations against Herman Cain as well?
Yes, I don't know. See, nobody.
They didn't talk about it enough.
Well, that's the point. If it was a real story, why not follow up on it? And if it wasn't a real story, why did it get brought up?
Well, again, these are all political distractions, like you had said previously. These are political distractions. It's a football issue to get people all up in a tizzy while they do a sleight of hand and keep the smoke and mirrors going from what's really important.
Well,
you had mentioned the military-industrial complex. They are heavily involved with the media. The CIA Operation Mockingbird is still ongoing. That was back in the early days of the Cold War. The CIA began a secret project called Operation Mockingbird with the intent of buying influence behind the scenes at major media outlets and putting reporters on the CIA payroll, which has been proven to be a stunning ongoing success. The CIA effort to recruit American news organizations and journalists to become spies and disseminators of propaganda was headed up by Frank Wisner, Alan Dulles, Richard Helms, and Philip Graham, who is the publisher of the Washington Post. Wisner had taken Graham under his wing to direct the program, codenamed Operation Mockingbird, and both have presumably committed suicide. It goes on to talk about how Bob Woodward was a naval intelligence officer. He was a briefer to the White House and knew many insiders, including General Alex Haig. A high-level source told Bernstein, one journalist is worth 20 agents. So, yeah, the military-industrial complex is totally involved with the mainstream media.
Let me try to prove a point here. Greta Van Susteren hit it right on the head this week. She's a Fox News person. And she's just beside herself on the fact of Benghazi, that 4 dead Americans is basically not being covered by the vast majority of the quote-unquote mainstream media. It's basically a Fox News story and an internet story. And she made the analogy, and I can support her on this, she made the analogy that if there was 4 unresolved murders in the Washington, D.C. area, it would literally be nonstop coverage on the news shows nightly.
Well, here's the thing. Even that is a gatekeeping stance by Fox News, because they're trying to pose as an opposition to Obama, but they're not going to let the real truth of what happened in Benghazi out. They want to approach it as, this is terrible. Obama is such a weak president, and he's screwed up, and that's why these people got killed. That's not the real reason those people got killed. Those people got killed because there was a stand-down order on security, because we wanted Chris Stevens dead, because he was getting cold feet on our gun-running operations that were being run out of that facility. That was not a consulate. That was a CIA facility. That was an interrogation workhouse in Benghazi. He was getting cold feet about the gun running that was going on to al-Qaeda forces in Syria, so we could use them as proxies to topple Assad. And you're not going to hear that on Fox News. So you've got these gatekeeping things that are happening on both sides of the equation. The Democrats are using this as a defense mechanism, saying, oh, the Republicans are doing anything that they can to attack Obama, and that's racist. And the Republicans are trying to go out and say, well, 4 people are dead because Obama's a weak president, but they're not going to let the actual truth out. And that's what the independent mainstream media is doing, like WorldNet Daily, like Infowars.com, like Homeland Security US, Canada Free Press, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, to back up what Greta said, we can only, our memories can only go back and recollect what was going on in the news prior to 9/11, when the Twin Towers were bombed. Mm-hmm. Now, if I remember this very vividly, you two may or may not, but do you remember Chandra Levy?
Yeah.
The jogger who was killed in Washington, mm-hmm. and it was thought that she was involved in a relationship with a congressman, Gary Condit.
Mm-hmm.
And this was what 9/11 blew off the news. This was literally a weekly, nightly story.
Well, should 9/11 have not blown it off the news?
Well, exactly.
No pun intended.
But the point being is that if what Greta was saying is that if there was 4 unsolved murders in the D.C. area, the mainstream media wouldn't leave that story alone, but yet they won't touch, for the most part, the Benghazi thing, and they're blowing these Benghazi hearings off as a witch hunt. It's
Do
a
you
witch
think
hunt.
that that story is more important than the other one? Which one has more validation, I guess?
Well, personally, in my opinion, I think that the mainstream media is, for the most part, dropping the ball when they give coverage to things like Kanye West and Kim Kardashian.
Well, of
Kim
course they are. That's
Yeah,
what they're
that's a
designed to
given.
do.
When they talk about Casey Kasem, and when they talk about the story that I
She's popping up in the news again? What, Casey Kasem, or are you talking about
no,
past that?
he was just found last night apparently.
Oh.
But what I'm saying is when Jay-Z and Beyonce's sister is fighting in an elevator in some sort of a domestic dispute, and who knows and who cares what it was over, I have no interest in the story. I want to know, and I want the media to get to the bottom of why we had 4 people killed in Benghazi and why Hillary Clinton has dropped the ball on not putting Boko Haram on a terrorist watch list when these are now the culprits that supposedly have kidnapped these 400 or 300 Nigerian girls. These are stories the media isn't covering while they're too busy telling us about Jay-Z.
Right. That's what they're designed to do. They're designed to distract you. That's why you have to ignore what the mainstream media is saying these days, and you have to go to independent outlets because that is the real media. And I've got some more examples of that to back it up after the break.
Okay. By golly, there we are. We're coming up on the top of the hour break, and this has been Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and co-host David Kanuk, and Carolyn Pettit in the studio, and Ryan, of course, producing. We will return shortly.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
we're back with Frankly Speaking Live. I'm your host, Frank Holzhauser, co-host David Kanyuk, and Carolyn Pettit in the studio this week. Basically, there's so much to cover in this story that I think we'll just keep going with it. But my question, getting back to the vast military-industrial complex, you see, everything I view as a Christian, I have to view through a religious, God-based, a faith filter.
Doesn't it get tiring after a while?
Well, everything that anything that we digest as a Christian, like food, we digest stimuli, and it all has to be filtered somehow to what is relevant
and what isn't.
Mm-hmm. We have to log some of it up here in our brain and check some out.
What if we just simply chose to ignore it? Would that be better?
Well, I'm not sure that an ignorant society is a wise society. But let me give you a point about this vast military-industrial complex. Obviously, they're said to have killed President Kennedy. Oliver Stone's film portrays or asserts that this complex is so powerful that they disposed of our president because he wasn't willing to engage in the Vietnam War like President Lyndon Johnson took us into later. My basic issue with this is I'll agree with that to a point. But when the Bible tells me, and Christ, in fact, tells me that before he comes, there will be wars and rumors of wars, and this must come to pass.
Mm-hmm. He also says, don't worry.
This has to come to pass.
Right. He says, don't worry when you hear of these things, too.
Right.
Don't worry.
So...
Well, that doesn't mean go to sleep. That doesn't mean fight injustice or anything.
No.
When Christ was talking about, when the disciples asked him about his second coming, he ran through a list of conditions. He didn't set a timetable. He said these things you'll know it when you see these things happen.
Yeah.
Now, this is just a wild theory on my part, but maybe there is not a set date for the return.
No, there isn't.
Maybe we can get a reprieve like they did at Nineveh if we fight on hard enough and not just go to sleep and let the evil happen. There's the old saying, all we need for evil to win is for good men to do nothing.
Well,
God says he's coming back because if he doesn't shorten the time and come back, there's not going to be any flesh left alive for him to come back too.
Well, exactly. So
that's why you fight.
Without promoting anarchy.
That's not anarchy.
No. But what I'm saying is without having no rules and ignoring society altogether, or becoming a fanatic about it and fighting and squabbling over every little thing, I think we as Christians need to continually look out for religious liberty, our ability to worship God as we please. I think that we as Christians should be involved in we should participate in voting. Again, if it comes down to a choice between God and country, I pledge allegiance to two things, God and country. When it comes down between God and country, let's just say God won't lose. So, but until God comes, I think we should be stewards of the earth. I think we should participate in our government, and we should try to vote in moral people into our government and try to reject the ones who are immoral.
Now, with Christ, though, when he came, not that I'm trying to come against that, but when he came, he didn't come as a politician, my friend. He came as a servant to the politicians.
Well,
so he didn't come from that stand. He didn't come from that. He came from a trough.
He was not going to enter into any dispute with Herod or Pilate over fiscal policy, unfair fiscal policy, tax policy, whatever, because he wasn't going to enter into a dispute with someone who could preemptively shorten his life before his mission was complete. So in other words, Christ had to die. He came with the purpose to die for our salvation, and he had a certain time frame in which this was to be done, and entering into dispute he said, render unto Caesar that which is
Caesar's, right, and then give to God what is God's.
Give to God which is God's. So I take that view as a Christian on this earth, that we give to the government what belongs to the government. We give to God what belongs to God, but I think we should be, as long as we're here, participatory in the in the government system. We should vote for our leaders. We should fight injustice and stand for right.
I agree with that to an extent, and then again, but Christ spent more time healing people.
The problem,
and bringing hope to the sick than he did to politicians.
The problem is that for the most part, the mainstream church is absolutely asleep at the wheel anymore, and a lot of them, the pastors of these mega churches, are now accomplices to the government encroachment on our civil liberties. Liberty is a biblical, Christ-like principle, and tyranny is even though tyranny of being able to do what thou let me back up a little bit. Let me reset. Do what thou wilt. Now, what do you think of when you think of that saying? That's a saying that, oh man, I'm free to do whatever I want and not have to worry about rules and boundaries and everything. Do what thou wilt was the slogan of Anton LaVey, who was the head of the Church of Satan. And that's kind of their slogan, is do what thou wilt. Now, you think about sin and everything. Sin is not freedom. Sin is absolute bondage.
Bondage, yes.
Right.
Yeah. So you've got a government that is pushing sin. That's absolute bondage, and they're going to become more tyrannical. So standing up against tyranny is absolutely a Christ-like principle.
Yeah, I agree. Well, now, one of the points that I wanted to make on this show is obviously a lot of these people, I don't care what you are. You can be, I will tell you what I am right here if I can find my description of myself.
You're a Gemini.
Find my about. I say right here.
Do you like long walks on the beach?
Yes. Well, I suppose I'm not seeing it. But I describe myself as one of the remnant. I describe myself as a Bible-thumping, right-wing conservative. I don't care what you describe yourself as. I can listen to a communist. I can listen to a Satanist. I can listen to anybody. But I just want to know that slant going in. So whether you agree with Sean Hannity or not, he will get on there and he will say, I am a Reagan conservative, whatever a Reagan conservative means. But Chris Matthews, on the other hand, he won't come on and give himself any kind of label. He will try to portray himself, even though he may be the biggest social utopian.
Why should we be giving ourselves these labels? I would prefer it that when you watch C-SPAN or something like that, think about how this would be if they didn't show the little R or the D by the name of somebody and you had to listen to the content of what they were saying. Think how changed our political landscape would be if you didn't have that.
Okay, on my political views, I have got down here, I will specify as a conservative, and I say I am a right-wing, Bible-thumping, God-advocating Christ follower. And so when I talk to you or when I talk to anybody, I'm not ashamed of admitting that. And so when you hear what I have to say, you take into consideration my bias. And everyone has a bias. I don't care who you are. And a lot of times my problem with the media is they come on like they're quote unquote this mainstream media, when in reality they're closet socialists.
Well, right, because they're promoting these labels, and you're only viewing them through the prism of these labels, and you're not paying attention to the content of what they say. If you actually paid attention to the content of what, if some of these so-called conservatives paid attention to the content of what somebody like John Boehner said, or Lindsey Graham, et cetera, they wouldn't view them, or John McCain, they wouldn't view them through the prism of being conservatives or Christians or anything like that. They'd be revealed as the socialist pigs that they actually are.
Well,
but let's hit on a few points here, getting back to military-industrial complex and their role in controlling the dialogue. You had talked about the military-industrial complex. So what is your thought? Do you think that they have as much of a role as I would contend in mainstream media, or not?
I'm sure they're a player. I'm told in the Bible that men will plot in secret to do evil against you as a righteous man, and God promises that their plots won't succeed. Mm-hmm. So they can plot all they want. I don't discard them. I don't necessarily buy everything that is said about them. I don't discard them either.
Mm-hmm.
Do you answer your own question? Do you think there's more to it?
Absolutely.
Then
let's hit a few points here before we get to the next break. Dwight D. Eisenhower, in his farewell address as he left the presidency, I don't have time to read all of this yet. Anybody can do a Google search and find this. Eisenhower probably would have known a little something or two about the military-industrial complex. He left a stark warning. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic process. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals so that security and liberty may prosper together. He was warning against that fascist element that was coming together back in the 50s.
Let me ask you...
Let me hit a few more points here. The National Defense Authorization the National Defense Authorization that was passed, well, here's the break. Basically, the government in 2012 legalized propaganda. They legalized the use of propaganda in America, which had strictly been prohibited previously.
Yes, is this our last break?
We've got our last break coming up. We're at 6:17.
So this has been Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, co-host David Canuck, and Carolyn Pettit, guest in the studio. We will return shortly with potentially our Hypocrites of the Week, or this conversation may continue. I'm not sure which.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program, or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
we're back with Frankly Speaking Live. I'm your host, Frank Holzhauser, and co-host David Kanyuk, and Carolyn Pettit as our guest in the studio this week. As always, Ryan producing. I think what we're going to do is we're going to postpone our hypocrites of the week and either do them next week or post them online, post them on the blog or something. But
we might hit them. We'll see.
I wanted to throw something out for your for you to ponder. There was I don't know who ran this poll.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a Fox News poll or whatever, but they polled, I think it was 400 people in the media. 7% of those polled identify themselves as Republican. 28% identify themselves as Democrat, and 50% identify themselves as independents. Now, I'm going to tell you right here, right now, I just totally do not believe there's 50% independent in the media. I believe these are people who are covering themselves like wolves in sheep's clothing with the independent label. And all I would like to know or demand to know is, okay, Bill O'Reilly, he can stomp up and down and he can tell me he's an independent every night of the week. But I definitely believe that Bill O'Reilly leans conservative.
I don't think he leans conservative or Democrat. I think he's a statist.
Well,
he's there to again. This goes back to Operation Mockingbird, to the military-industrial complex. He is a bought-off propagandist. Absolutely. He's not going to go in there. He'll go in there and give you a little perfunctory, oh, Obama did this, blah, blah, blah. But he's not going to go in and talk about the actual crimes of what Obama is doing.
Okay, but above and beyond all that, I would just like to know in disclosure what you are and what potential bias you have. But let me ask you a question. Would you agree there's times, taking the industrial military complex out of it, do you agree that there's times that we have to be involved in war?
Yeah, if we get attacked, we have to be in war.
I believe there is people like Geraldo Rivera. If he was living during World War II and our assault on Normandy, I think potentially there's people like Geraldo Rivera who would like to announce our arrival. Which brings me up to this concept. Does the government have any right to keep a secret? And if they do have a right to keep one secret, they will find ways to keep other secrets. And at some point, we end up in the Edward Snowden mess or the Bradley Manning mess, where there's so much that is not being told us by our government. Do we have a right to know some of this? Should some of this be exposed to the light of day? Or where do we draw the line on government secrecy?
There's a difference. There's a difference. We were in a declared war in World War II with Germany. So that's a military operation there. So yeah, you cannot go disclosing that secret because not just military lives are in danger, but you know, if we lose the war, that's going to be our lives on the line as well. There's a difference between what Bradley Manning and Edward Snowden did. I would make the analogy that let's say that they were the receptionists at a police station or something. They're the ones that were there typing the reports, and they sat there and watched cops doing crimes day in and day out, and then they blew the whistle on it. Well, now suddenly this guy who's been typing up the reports, he's the bad guy because all he's doing is saying, "Hey, these guys are committing crimes," and we're trying to get out there and make them the bad guys. Like, oh, well, Edward Snowden, you've blown up police operations because you expose that these cops are stealing cars and all this stuff. No, absolutely not. Our government has been committing crimes. The NSA is violating the Fourth Amendment. They shouldn't be listening in on everybody's calls, and there's a greater agenda out with that as well. That's a whole other show to get into. The last point that I want to make, and I want to bring up this video that was on Conan O'Brien of all places. Mm-hmm. The point that I want to make here is that most media is getting a story that's filtered through, I don't know if I want to call it the military-industrial complex, but there are agents within newsrooms that are filtering the stories. And Ryan, if we could hit that Conan O'Brien tape. Conan O'Brien found a bunch of news stories basically from different stations showing the exact same thing on the same night. And hit that when you're ready, Ryan. Roll that beautiful bean footage.
There's apparently an even bigger story that's sweeping the nation right now. Check it out.
Well, if you filled up your gas tank lately, then you don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
So you don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you gas prices are on the rise. I know.
Thanks very much, Ryan. So yeah, funny, I know, but the point is, these people are reading a script.
Well, yes,
they're getting fed all this stuff.
Where did you
have a
find
controlled
that?
media. We don't have it. The only media that's out there that should be even considered is the independent media, like InfoWars and WorldNet Daily, etc. Hillary Clinton, in a speech in 2011, even admitted that they're losing the info war. Simeon Brzezinski, national intelligence advisor, has said that populist resistance is derailing the New World Order because of a global awakening that's occurring, because people are waking up to this Bravo Sierra that's going on. These people are worried about these independent outlets there.
I'm still trying to figure out where you found this video out. That's hilarious.
This obviously is a talking point, but listen, even Bill O'Reilly will admit that cable television, the cable media opportunity, has opened up an avenue where O'Reilly can be heard when back in the old 50s, in the 60s and 70s, when Walter Cronkite and Brinkley and Huntley dominated the three news networks. That was even a worse time.
No. I mean, there was still control, but it wasn't as controlled as it is now. The most egregious example that I want to give you is back during the Boston bombing, the Boston Marathon bombing, last year. InfoWars broke. They broke who was actually going to be blamed for this Boston bombing. Originally, this was going to be blamed on some white militia type guy, but they found the pictures from CCTV off of 4chan that they were going to use. There was a press conference that was called and everything that they were going to announce it, and then all of a sudden, InfoWars broke that story, and press conference called off because there's a bomb threat, and then we got the whole story about the Russian agents who were supposedly the bombers. There was a press conference that was finally held where InfoWars independent reporter Dan Bidandi had photos of what was supposed to be shown. The FBI was so worried about it that they actually got up there at a press conference seen by millions around the world, and Richard Deloriers, special agents in charge of the FBI's Boston division, produced photos and video of two suspects in the marathon bombings. These are the Russian kids. He stated, "These images should be the only ones, I emphasize, the only ones that the public should view to assist us. Other photos should not be deemed credible, and they unnecessarily divert the public's attention in the wrong direction." They said, only look at these and not any others. Can you believe that?
Well, this has been an interesting show. And this has been Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, co-host David Canute, Carolyn Pettit.
Thank you.
And Ryan producing. I'm guessing we'll pick up on this story next week.
We will never speak of it again.
Because I don't think we exhaustively talked this one all out yet. So join us again next week, same time, same channel. And we'll be prepared next week for sure with our Hypocrites of the Week.
God bless, keep your powder dry and your K-bar sharp.